Hello and welcome back. All right, so in this lesson, we're going to go over the effects panel, which has a few different options. We have a dehaze, a grain, and a post-crop vignetting option. So we're going to go over each one of these options, and I'm going to explain how to use them. So for the first option, we have dehaze, and we really don't have any type of a haze in this image. So we're going to go ahead and work on this image so I can show you how to remove the haze, which you can clearly see in this particular photo. We have the sun behind them, so they're being lit from behind, and it's creating a haze over the entire image. So how do you remove it? Well, it's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is adjust the slider to positive or negative to increase or decrease the amount of haze. So the more I go to the right, the more of the haze is being removed. Now, prior to having this particular tool, there were several different tools that you had to use in order to remove it. Tone curve would be one of them. Adding contrast and clarity would be the others. So this is basically a few tools combined into one, and it's basically removing the haze by adding contrast to your image. So if we take a look at the before and after, we can definitely see there's been a boost in contrast, and in the process, it's removed the haze. If you go to the left, you are actually going to increase the haze. So if you want a fog light condition, which you can actually do with this image, we can decrease the amount of the dehaze, and in effect, it will provide some type of haze over the image. So you could actually add some haze to the image if you want to create that kind of effect. All right, let's take a look at grain, and grain will simply add, grain to your image. So back in the days of film, depending on the type of film that you purchased and the ISO of that particular film would determine how much grain would be added to the image. So the higher the ISO setting, the more grain was added to your image. So if you want to get that film look, you can add grain with the amount slider. You can then increase the size of the grain with the size slider, and you can make the grain even more rough versus less rough. So depending on how much grain you want to add to your image. And this is a great way to add a retro type feel to your image. Another thing I would do for something like that would be lower the saturation just a little bit. And just like that, you have a vintage retro look. I'm going to go ahead and reset this because I don't want any grain on that image. Okay, so next we have post-crop vignetting, and first we're going to work on this image because I want to show you how some of these different styles of vignettes that you have available will work. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to adjust the amount to -100, and then you're going to see right here we have a style. So this is highlight priority, which is selected by default, but there's also a color priority and a paint overlay. So I'm going to go over the differences between the three and which one I prefer. So we're going to start with highlight priority first. We're going to skip these first three sliders because I want to adjust the highlights since we're using highlight priority. So as you can see, we have a vignette in all four corners of the image, but we have a very bright highlight in this section of the image, and we can see the vignette over here in this corner. But if I adjust the highlights to the right, it will begin removing that vignette in that area. So if you want to remove the vignette from your highlights because it's too dark, you can remove it completely, or you can remove part of it and then keep some of the vignette in that area. And that's entirely up to you on how much you want to add or remove your vignette in the highlights. So that is highlight priority. All right, let's go ahead and move to this image next, and I'm going to go ahead and show you these three sliders next, so it's easier to view it on this particular image. Midpoint will increase the size of the vignette. Roundness will increase or decrease the roundness of the vignette. And then feather will increase or decrease the feather, which means you can have a hard edge vignette or you can have a very soft edge vignette. So that's entirely up to you, but you have those three options to fine-tune the vignette to your personal style. Now again, we're still on highlight priority, and we have some highlights up in this area, but the vignette is up in here as well. So I can reduce that vignette in the highlights by adjusting the highlight slider. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at color priority next. So you may find some of your images will have a color shift when applying a vignette, and if you use color priority as your style, then you don't have to worry about that color shift in the areas where the vignette is being applied. And then everything else pretty much works the same. And then the last option is a paint overlay, which is completely different from the other two, and it's more of an old school type vignette in that it's just going to apply the vignette and it's not taking the highlights into consideration or the colors. It's just going to add the vignette without any other adjustments. Personally, I just keep it on highlight priority because that is the type of vignette that I prefer for my style, and it does give me the option to make adjustments in the highlights if I choose to do so. Okay, so for this particular image, I'm going to increase the vignette to -10, and I'm going to keep it on highlight priority. So if you want to add a vignette to your image as well, you can do that, or you can skip it. It's all up to you. I do like a vignette on my image, and I think -10 is sufficient for this particular image. And then in the next lesson, we are going to work on our camera calibration profile. We're going to work on some of these different options here, and I'm going to explain what we can do with these different options. So if you're ready to get started on that, let's do it.